All right, we have a panel. So let's start by, okay, so I think let's start by a quick self-introduction. And I think both JK and Gary kind of answered like why they like Grin. But maybe just a question, how do you first find out about Grin? To Gary as well. So maybe we can start from Gary and then go down.
Okay, in the end of 2017, when I'm researching the Bitcoin, I find a paper about the Mimblewimble. That's a very interesting white paper. So for me, the first image for Mimblewimble is the white paper is quite simple. Just the same feeling when I reading the Bitcoin white paper. So that's all.
All right, my name is A. I'm representing Bitcoin Addict today. So when I first heard about Mimblewimble was around December last year. But it's actually in January that I actually surprised by, like the price shot up to $75 and suddenly like crashed down, right? So that actually caught my attention. And because of the name Mimblewimble as well, like I'm not really a Harry Potter fan, but I was like, what the hell is this? And I actually go and research on it. So that's how I actually stumbled upon it.
Okay, my name is Boss. So for me, I learned about Grin is actually from my friends who is do the mining stuff. So he just come to me and say, hey boss, this one is quite cool tech. So I just like, okay, going back to see the tech there on how the Mimblewimble actually works. So that's why I'm interested in Grin. Yeah.
I'm JK. I'm an operations manager at Bitfish, and I think the first enthusiast of Grin in our company. I first stumbled upon Mimblewimble just because I was going through the privacy coin phase where I was researching about privacy coins, and someone on a forum just had, oh, check this out, and then I read it. It was not like 2017, it was not long ago, but before the mainnet launch. And then while looking into Mimblewimble, I looked at like, oh, what projects are actually implementing it. And that's how sort of I stumbled upon Grin.
Yeah, so for me, I found out about Grin and Mimblewimble, I think, end of last year. I think when everyone was just like a little bit bored, a little bit like, very quiet. So I'd be just like doing research about interesting new projects. And that's kind of how I chanced upon Grin. And then how I actually got to know Gary, was because I saw that he's based in Singapore, and I live in Singapore, so I just reached out and say, hey, I sent him a cold email saying, hey, I like this project, and I'd love to just have a chat and see, how can I help the community, right? And I think that's kind of how we connected, and we hosted the first Singapore meetup together after that. Yeah, so I think now that we kind of understand how we found out about Grin and our involvement in some way in the Grin community, love to hear like maybe a show of hands from you guys. So how many of you heard of Grin before today? Awesome. And how many of you mine Grin? Oh, nice, mine Grin. Okay, cool. Transacted and bought Grin. Looked at the GitHub page. Nice. Developing Grin applications. Okay, not enough. Okay, but it's a good kind of sense of like, where everyone is at. Okay, so I think, I know that Gary kind of explained what Grin is to him, but maybe on your perspective, how would you explain Grin to someone who's maybe not heard of Grin yet?
Well, to me, Grin is an alternative form of money. Like we all know Bitcoin, right? We all know Ethereum, and we all know that the currency has like 1,000 of them on CoinMarketCap. But Grin is an alternative one on the privacy coin end, and I think it's pretty interesting because you know that each coin have their own monetary policy, and Grin has a really unique one with their fixed inflation. So that's how I actually interested in it, and yep.
I think the most interesting part on Grin for me is its scalability, the way that it's hiding a lot of hash or some sort of that on the blockchain, and to reduce the blockchain size. That is something that's quite cool for me, and it also like reduce the computing power when it try to binding the transaction on blockchain. So yeah, that's why.
It's the project that's trying to make the Bitcoin launch model cool again.
Make America great again?
No. Slight twisting.
So Gary, so you mentioned earlier about scriptless scripts by Andrew Postra. How does that work? I mean, if you to explain it a little bit more simply, is that possible? Even.
For this one, even Andrew here, it's difficult to describe it by a few sentences. Need 10 minutes for for
Watch a YouTube
whole
video.
slides. So I will try. For the scriptless script. So this one, the basic idea is the adapter signature. In adapter signature, one can hide a secret key during the transaction. So when the transaction is done, the secret key is revealed automatically. That's the magic. Is the basic of this one.
So I actually was at GrinCon US when Andrew gave a pretty good talk about this particular feature. So I highly recommend if you are very interested in this area and the possible innovations there, to just look up Andrew Postra scriptless scripts. I think GrinCon San Francisco. Yeah, so that's a pretty good, I think 1 hour kind of talk if you have the time. Yeah. Is there a way for Grin's privacy features to be compromised, Gary?
Right.
Is there a way for the privacy features of Grin to be compromised?
So it depends on what do you want for this compromise. So for me, if it's really a requirement, somebody want this, I'm sure we can provide this, perhaps in set chain, in application level. But it's sure it can do it. But up to now, I don't see this use case.
I think what you are also meaning is that also like, can it be removed as well, right? Can the privacy features be removed? Is that what you're saying? Or are you saying more of like how to attack the privacy features, the privacy part of Grin?
So if you want to a middle level, you have to sacrifice one to get another one.
Yep.
So why you do that?
So you mentioned, so we know that there's a lot of interest on the mining side for Grin. This is like for anyone, right? I think you especially as well, because you spun up your GPU to mine Grin as well. How's the process? Tell us a bit more about the process, and how do you find the mining, mining space for Grin shipping up? Yeah.
Oh, I don't know about the mining space specifically, but I could definitely talk about my experience. I go back to Grin-forum because that's where all the discussion about Grin was happening, about how you can mine. And even the people who were operating the mining pools and then were creating the software required to run your miners, they all posted there, and they were all giving up pretty good introductions. Some people were creating videos, some people were creating blog posts, and basically what I did was I just followed through what people were saying there on the forum, and so it just required me to just download. I used the open source the miner software created by the Grin team, and so I used that. I downloaded that, and then I just spun it up, and then joined one of the mining pools to start off, because there's no way I'm gonna find a block with my GPU. Yeah. But yeah, the forum was what made the entire process so easy.
Have any of you seen any a lot of mining interest in the Thai community and so on? Yeah.
Well, after I wrote an article about Grin, there's so many people ask like how to mine this, because the article make it looks like like a new hope for miners, but in reality it's not so hard to mine Grin, but I think it's still lack of like a profit calculator and that sort of thing for like people who like I would say like who have like a few rigs in their home to start mining, because they don't want to get burned like they mine Ethereum, right? Well, at the moment, like for normal people who doesn't get like a cheap electricity rate, they turn off their GPU already. So yeah, but of course, there's so much interest in firing it back up, even for myself, because my machine is off as well. Unfortunately, yeah.
see. So you don't have free electricity. I see. Okay. What are the other things that you are hearing from the Thai community about Grin? Like I think what are some of the common topics? Like, is it people hoping for new features, people hoping for new applications, better wallets, better exchange support, or what is it that you are seeing that people are talking about?
I think a lot of people try to understand like how the Mimble work first. I mean like this one is basic question I get every time. Like I try to talk to other people about Grin, is the Mimble and how it's work. Everyone will ask like, okay, why is need to be a new currency? Why is better than Bitcoin and some sort of that? That is kind of stage of the Thai community right now. So yeah, then yeah.
Well, a bit different from my side. Like people asking, do I buy now? Like, but yeah, I mean, of course, like there's a lot of investor, right? Of course, we want to, like let's say you miss Bitcoin, maybe you can hop onto Grin. But just be careful on the inflation rate and everything. Like do more research before you buy into anything.
Tell me a bit more about your perspective on the inflation rate. Yeah.
Well, Grin have infinite inflation, right? Like to put it simple is that there's no definite number of Grin ever, right? But so people will say, hey, there's no scarcity there, right? It's not like Bitcoin, why would people even store it? But well, although like it might look a bit bad in the first year because like you see that like right now there could be like 2 million, next month could be 4 million, right? But at the end of the day, right, the inflation will be less than even US dollars inflation rate, and also even less than most of the coin. And if you compare to Ethereum, Ethereum also have the infinite inflation rate. So this could be one of the coin that have a low inflation rate, fixed one. I heard from someone who study economics says that the good currency is not about having limit of supply, but it's all about like having a fixed inflation rate, and that because like everyone know that how much it's gonna generate each year. Then like the value that you can actually expect, rather than like suddenly you print like another $1 trillion, right? So that's my.
I see. So I think just my last question to Gary before open up to the audience for questions is, so two of the things that I noticed from the presentation that you gave was, one of them was about receiver initiated transactions, and the other one is Grin++. So just maybe just a comment on your end about what do you think, why is Grin++ important? Why is receiver? What are the possibilities of receiver initiated transactions as well?
Okay. About the Grin++, as we see in Bitcoin world, we have Rust Bitcoin and a lot of other Bitcoin implementation. Also in Ethereum, we see the main Gold Ethereum. Also we see the parity. It's a Rust implementation. So for all these projects, there are always new opportunity to implement a new project, but based on the same technology. So for the community and for the technology point of view, we welcome all kinds of implementation because we don't like to let developers to think, oh, it's a Rust. I use Java. I cannot join. So if you have a Java implication, then all the Java community developers has opportunity to join the Grin community. Also for C++, we know the first implementation of Bitcoin is C++. So we believe there are a lot of great developers for C++. So that's for this one. And regarding the invoice feature, this one is how to say, we can take an example for this one. For some use case, if you have a online shop, the customer buy something from this shop, so the a natural process is the shop should generate this transaction with the known amount, and it's the shop's responsibility to finalize this transaction and giving the invoice and control the shifting, the delivery. So in the current implementation, we use the sender first, but this one implementation is not good in some use case. So that's why we will implement a new model for transaction for the receiver initiated firstly.
Awesome. So let's open up to you guys for questions. I can pass the mic around, or someone can pass the mic around.
So as for the Grin is a privacy coin, right? So as last month, Zcash is also a privacy coin, and someone create the coin from from nowhere, just from the bug of the software. So it's the concept of Grin guarantee that no one can do this.
So you're mentioning about the Zcash
Yeah.
vulnerability, right? That the Zcash company chose not to disclose and try to solve it for some time,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
No, I mean, like last month, there's an incident that some hacker or someone create, and
Similar incident.
Yeah,
that
yeah,
you
yeah,
mentioned,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think Gary might be aware of that that incident. Yeah, and
So I know this one, but I don't know the detail about the technology in Zcash. So for Grin, the better thing is all the mathematics is quite simple. In what the most difficult thing is to implement some great feature with simple thing. If you do it very complex in a very difficult way, that's not a cool thing. But if you can do it in a most simple way, that's the cool thing. If the math is quite simple, everybody can read and understand and verify it works. Then the room for defects is, of course, quite small. For Zcash, the usability, of course, Grin has the great simple for compared to all the existing cryptos.
I think let me just add on one point since you talk about the security as well. So I think one of the things that the contributions to the Grin Developer Fund also goes to is conducting of security audits. So as far as I know, before the mainnet launch of Grin, what happened was one of the really good security audit firms actually sort of kind of really set aside time to audit the code base, the core code base, right? But of course, that's just the core of it. There's a lot more that needs to be audited. So I think a lot of the donations from the Grin community for the Grin project will also go to a security audits, which are fairly important, right, as we know. And thanks for mentioning the incident as well for Zcash. Yeah.
Because the Zcash incident, no one can verify the problem. Is it really happened? But what about Grin? You can verify that? Like, at this time, over the total supply should be like 1,000. Can you check that total supply is over than normal? Like
The total supply,
yeah.
we have a simple math. Always the sum is 0. So you cannot increase and you cannot create money in any output because if you do that, all the chain verification will fail.
Right. Hello. My name is Victor. I have two questions. I'm a developer myself, so I'm a bit interested in the technical side, though I'm not too well read on the Grin project yet, at least. So I'm sorry if I misunderstood something about the presentation. But first of all, I have a question regarding the backups of the wallets. I saw in your presentation that in order to prove ownership, the amount was part of the proof of, like, the amount was what was multiplied by the second generator point to prove ownership of an output. So the amount is secret. Does that mean that we can't create like hierarchical deterministic wallets like we have in Bitcoin? Because yeah, it's impossible to determine the future amounts that people will transact. So does that also mean that in order to have a backup of your wallet, you always need to know the last transaction, so you can't keep like a seed like we have in Bitcoin?
Are you talking about HD wallet, right?
Yes, yes.
BIP32.
Yes. Do you support that in Grin?
Yeah, already.
Oh, right, right.
Yeah.
Then I must have misunderstood.
So
I'm
only
sorry.
one secret is needed.
Okay, perfect. And the second question I had was for you mentioned atomic swaps, and you don't support scripts. How do you do that? I remember that there was a discussion a while back about Snore signatures, that you could use that for atomic swaps. Is that something you use in Grin?
Yeah, we using the Andrew's scriptless script. Adapt the signature.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
Hi, I have two questions. So because Grin position itself as a currency, so do you guys see any signs of merchant adoption from like payment processing side, or it is right now it is too early to tell? This is the first question. And the second question is that, do you guys think the nature of privacy coin will prevent itself become a truly currency? Like recently we saw Fortnite's payment processor just drop Monero as one of the payment method. So do you guys think that's like one of the hurdle will prevent this currency become like get truly global adoption?
You mentioned first mainstream adoption first, right?
The first one is from the merchant side, because if you want to become a like currency, you need to the merchant need to accept it. So I just wonder, do you guys see any sign of merchant adoptions?
I mean, not that I'm aware of, just because it's very, very soon. Of course, Gary could clarify if that's not the case, but I don't believe there's any merchant adoption yet. But like again, it's been only a month since, less than a month since mainland launched, and as Gary mentioned, like there's a lot of more like security audits that need to happen. There's a lot more development that needs to happen. So I think merchant adoption is going to come after people demand for it, right? And I think mainstream adoption might actually push merchants to actually accept it as a payment. And one thing I wanted to add on the mainstream adoption part is that you know, people might be wondering about like why do you need privacy coins, but you gotta really consider some of the less the third-party countries where third world countries where money sometimes can be censored, like what you're paying, like your Visa cards, like it might not be even available, and any form of money you're trying to transact with might be censored or tracked. And this is sort of where I see these privacy coins playing an actual big role. And I think this is where we'll see the adoption first, and then that will come forward to like the more like developed countries, because that's where just the demand is right now.
That's good. Oh, and the second question is because do you guys think the nature of privacy coin will prevent itself become adopted by the mainstream audience or mainstream users?
I think just people are generally scared right now, at least on the government side as well, because the first thing you think about when privacy coins, you know, like, oh, you can't track any money, is like illegal transactions, like, you know, buying it, using it to buy drugs or something. But again, I think it's primarily because people don't realize that the real use case is not in developed countries, but rather in third world countries where these sort of forms of money is needed. And so I think it's just going to take a little bit more time for people just to get warm up to it, I think. I think it's just a matter of time, and then, and, again, the community just being active on all fronts.
Yeah, I agree with JK. We need time. At this moment, perhaps we cannot describe very detail about this one, but I believe in green community, we will have a lot of these situations to find the very exciting use case, and our vision is to become a mainstream for green. As you know, we design this constant emission not only for simple. We want to solve some problems we already see. We already saw in Bitcoin, the scalability, privacy. Also, you can think about fluidity and the If you compare Grin with other privacy coins, you don't forget the infinity in inflation, because we want to solve the supply volume problem for the privacy coins. So we want to compare it with Bitcoin, not just the privacy coin. So in other views, the scalability is more important than the privacy feature.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to add one thing. It's that, believe it or not, there are a lot of companies out there who are doing like intense analytics on like the Bitcoin blockchain. And so, believe it or not, some of them will be selling those services to governments and other companies. So keep in mind that these things can be tracked. So privacy coins are definitely going to become more important as these sort of services become more public to the community.
You said that it's have a good scalability, so I just want to know that how small it is compared to Bitcoin and privacy-oriented coins such as Monero or Zcash. Like, what the percentage of the size of the transaction compared to them? And the other question is there a problem currently for Zcash and Monero that they have a big transaction? What make it bad? Like, is there a real problem that we can see?
So just to rephrase, so the first question is basically what's the size of Grin versus Bitcoin, Zcash, and Monero, if their numbers. And the second one is basically talking about what are some of the limitations on Monero and Zcash versus Grin, right?
I know that they are very big size because of like cryptography, but I want to know that is it that bad? Like,
for the first question, we already have a lot of materials in the internet about the comparing. So I don't want to talk the detail here. You can simply search the Google to find them. For the second question, it's almost same as the first one. you can find the detail. I don't want to say the transaction size is the real problem, but if we have a simple solution to have the smaller transaction size, why not?
Hello. Just want to add into that. Like, smaller size means the node doesn't need basically it doesn't require so much space, right? So in other words, you can have more miners, you can have more nodes, right? So which means more decentralization. So that's one of the benefit of having the small size block. And the other is just like Gary said.
I guess to some extent as well, if you're a Grin developer, you also wouldn't want to be, I guess, overly criticizing other projects, right? I think you just want to make sure that you are focusing on what you can do better, right? As a Grin community, in terms of like what you think you want to focus on, privacy, scalability, and other kind of features. I think that's kind of maybe one perspective to consider, right? But of course, if you are more looking at it from a research perspective, or just generally which one should I be holding my basket of, like, you know, investment portfolio, for example, then maybe you want to compare a little bit more. Yeah.
And for the size, you can see in Bitcoin in the beginning the average size, transaction size is about 250. It's not very big. Now you can see the average could be 500 bytes or 600 bytes. I don't really remember. But this is only one aspect. Another aspect, Bitcoin has the growth problem. Even you have a small size, but you use this one for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, then now we need 200 gigabytes for the chain data. But for 30 years later, what's that size? So Grin, the Mimblewimble provide a solution to remove the data from the chain. So it can solve the growth problem. You can today you can support it with a very common computer, and 10 years later, 20 years later, the computer power will grow, and the basic technology, the base of Grin, don't need that power. Then we can use that power to do a lot of other things. So the potential is very big.
Okay, my question is for Gary. So thank you very much for your presentation. It's very informative. My question is about the atomic swaps. The atomic swap, does this you mean that we can do atomic swap with the Bitcoin? And if we can do that, it means that Bitcoin need to fork or no need to fork to do that?
Oh, no need. Both Bitcoin and Ethereum can be used in for Grin atomic swap. We have a demo. In last year. You can find it from the you can contact me. I forward the link for you.
Thank you.
Hello. I listen the feature that Grin has is quite awesome. In terms of the academic, I think it's very good. But in terms of investment, the point of investment, in terms of the store of value that you mentioned about the unlimited emission, what is the key point that you're gonna make the investor to hold Grin? Because if the is unlimited emission, why we need to hold it? Grin?
Yeah, good question. So we say in the long term, the Grin is a better MOE than Bitcoin. So the keyword is long term. for short term, you cannot compare it with Bitcoin, right? But for the infinity, for the constant emission, we can see a lot of examples in reality. For example, the fiat, the US dollar. You cannot say US dollar is a limited emission, right? Here I think is infinity emission, but of course the US dollar is a stock value in the world.
So just want to add on what Gary say. The main vision of Grin itself is not to be like a store value, but it needs to be like a currency which is like can be transacted, right? The main vision of Grin.
I think I read it somewhere from the internet, right? It says that the green goal is not to be a good store of value, but on the other hand, it wants to be the good MOE, right? Medium of exchange. So basically, encourage people to use it, not to store it. And in my point of view, right, in the short term, maybe yes. In the long term, maybe you find that this inflation is much better than unpredictable inflation by the government, right? Or it may be even better than gold, as in like for gold, right? Just as a knowledge piece, you don't really know what the inflation of gold rate. You know it's limited, right? But every year, right, gold actually get mined a lot, and the rate is actually high as well, correct? So green is just a good option that's saying that okay, right, we got exactly the same amount every year. So in the future, if that become like let's say 1% or less than that, maybe it can become a good store of value as well. But in the meantime, I still support it as a medium of exchange where you have it and you're supposed to spend it before it, the value actually get less.
I also wanted to just add 2 points actually, and US dollar is actually a good point, and Japanese yen as well. Like, people still flock to these currencies. Why? Because they want to maintain the value of their assets. And why do they do so when Japanese yen and US dollars are always being printed? And then on another point, are there any blockchains that have stopped emitting additional additional coins at this point? No, not really, and we haven't really seen the effect yet. We're just speculating on how that would look, and we're speculating that an initial set of supply would mean higher value per each coin, but that remains to be seen because you have also other disincentives, such as miners might be disincentivized to participate in mining because there aren't any more block rewards, rather just mining, just fees, transaction fees. So I think it's yet to be seen, and I think it's just too early to speculate whether or not this, this constant emission is harmful or beneficial to investors eventually.
Thank you very much. One thing, I think I got the answer, but for me, I think nothing right or wrong, but I just want to know what is the position that Grin want to be in the crypto space. That's all.
Well, I only read it from the internet, so I wouldn't speak for everyone here. But I think, yeah, like I said, it wants to be a medium of exchange. It want people to spend it as cash, and also be a one of the options for privacy.
I think that's a very good question because at the end of the day, I think the right answer, I don't think it's the right answer, right? I mean, you might feel it's a store value, I might feel it's a privacy point that for certain purposes. And the developer might feel it's at the end of the day, there's no centralized entity controlling the direction of everything going, right? Everyone has a part to play, right? So if you feel like it's store value, that's great. If I feel that it's something else, then that's good. And we can all contribute, right? So I think that's the beauty of it as well. Yeah, and I think coming back to JK's point about open source projects and so on, I think it's kind of the spirit of what we're trying to encourage as well. Yeah. All right, I think we're pretty good on questions and time. I mean, if you guys have any questions specifically that you want to ask Gary, you can also take it offline with him. He's also available on Telegram or on GitHub. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you for our panelists.